They say the soul of a musician is poured into their work. In my case, that was literally true. They fired me anyway. Liam, the man I loved, the man I built a billion-dollar company with, handed me my life in a cardboard box and told me I was no longer a good fit. He'd replaced me with a sleek business school graduate, forgetting one crucial detail. I was still the only one who held the key to the soul of our creation. My name is Danica Mendez, and 4 months ago I was the chief creative officer at Orabeat, the fastest-growing music AI company in the world. Today I'm watching their stock price begin a slow, agonizing slide from the quiet of my new studio. Some might call it revenge. I call it cadence. A predictable, inevitable rhythm of consequence. It was a Friday evening when my world fractured. The open plan office, usually buzzing with the creative energy of composers and coders, was quiet. I was always the last to leave, a habit formed over 6 years of birthing our AI, Cadence, from a concept in a garage into a global phenomenon. My phone chimed with a calendar notification. Urgent strategy review, main boardroom, 6:00 p.m. I remember staring at the screen, a cold knot tightening in my stomach. No agenda, no attachments. A late Friday meeting in the tech world was never good news. Still, I grabbed my tablet and walked down the polished concrete floors, past the wall of awards where my name was engraved on half a dozen statuettes, past the soundproof studios I had designed myself. Liam Foster was waiting for me. The irony was a physical ache in my chest. We had met in a university music tech lab, two dreamers who believed we could teach a machine to feel music. Now he sat at the head of a massive mahogany table, his reflection staring back from its perfect sheen. His once passionate eyes were carefully blank. Beside him sat Jessica Croft, a recent hire from Wharton whose title was vague but whose purpose, I was beginning to realize, had been to shadow me, to learn my processes, to map the terrain of my mind. A man in a suit I didn't recognize sat in the corner, a silent observer. "Please, sit down, Danny," Liam said. He didn't use my full name. He hadn't in years. His voice had the smooth, practiced tone of a CEO, a sound so different from the excited programmer who once kept me up all night debating the merits of a chord progression. I remained standing. "What's this about, Liam?" He slid a leather-bound folder across the table. It stopped inches from my hand. "As part of our strategic realignment ahead of the merger, we're restructuring the creative leadership." It was corporate speak, the language of execution without the mess. "You're firing me," I said. It wasn't a question. Liam winced, a flicker of the man I knew. "We're eliminating your position. Your artistic contributions have been foundational, Danica, but as we scale, we need a more commercially oriented approach to product strategy." The stranger stood and extended a hand. "Mark Davies, Human Resources. We've prepared a generous severance package that reflects your immense value to the company." "I built Cadence's emotive core," I interrupted, my voice dangerously calm. "The entire system, its ability to generate music that makes people cry, that makes their hearts race during a movie's climax, runs on my architecture. Every note it writes is an echo of my creative process." Liam finally looked at me, a mixture of pity and impatience in his eyes, "and we will always be grateful for that foundation. But technology moves on. Companies evolve. Jessica will be spearheading our new music product strategy division. She has an exciting vision for maximizing Cadence's market penetration." Jessica offered a small, uncomfortable smile. "I've learned so much from you, Danica." A cold, sharp clarity washed over me. "The original author clause," I said, looking directly at Liam. "You can't alter the emotive core without my biometric approval. It's hard-coded into the system." Liam's smile was thin, brittle. "Actually, if you'll recall the IP assignment update you signed 3 months ago, all proprietary architecture belongs to Orabeat. The author clause was a legacy protocol. It's been made redundant by our new unified executive control system." I thought back to the document he'd given me, titled Routine IP Protection Update. He'd said it was just legal housekeeping. I had taken it home, read every line, and found the poison pill buried in a sub-clause. It was designed to do exactly what he said, to sever my connection, my control. But Liam, for all his business brilliance, had never truly understood the intricacies of my design. Before signing, I had made my own subtle edit, a single line of code in the digital signature's metadata. It was an encrypted command that cross-referenced any core update request with a separate, private server of mine. A server they knew nothing about. They had checked the legal text, but they hadn't checked the digital signature source code. They hadn't noticed. We've had your personal effects from your office packed up, Mark said, sliding a brown cardboard box onto the table. Company policy requires the immediate surrender of your access card and all company devices. 6 years of my life, my heart, my soul, reduced to a box. Your company email will be deactivated at midnight, Liam added, his gaze fixed somewhere over my shoulder. For continuity, please forward any pending partner communications to Jessica. I looked at the box, then at the termination papers, then at Liam, the man I had celebrated with when we landed our first movie score, the man who used to call me the soul of his machine. You need my signature on this for it to be legal, I said, pointing to the papers. Yes, standard procedure, Mark replied. I picked up the pen. I signed my name, Danica Mendez, with a slow, deliberate flourish. I stood up, leaving the pen on the table. Good luck creating emotion from numbers, Jessica, I said, my voice even. You're going to need it. As I walked out of the Orabeat Tower for the last time, the box feeling impossibly heavy in my arms, I didn't feel anger. I felt a strange, quiet sense of purpose. They thought they had taken everything from me. They had no idea they had just handed me the one thing I needed most, freedom. The first few years at Orabeat felt like a different lifetime. Liam and I, working out of his garage in Mountain View, fueled by instant noodles and the shared, insane belief that we could create an AI that didn't just compose music, but understood it. The idea for the emotive core came to me one night after we'd worked for 36 hours straight. We were trying to get the AI to write a simple, sad melody, and all it produced was technically correct but emotionally empty arrangements. It's just math, Liam had groaned, his head in his hands. It can't feel loss, it can't feel joy. Not if we teach it, I had replied, already sketching on a whiteboard. We don't need to teach it emotions. We need to teach it the patterns of human emotional expression in music. We need to give it a soul. Over the next 2 years, I built that soul. The emotive core wasn't just an algorithm. It was a complex neural network that I fed with thousands of pieces of classical music, but more importantly, with my own biometric data. I hooked myself up to sensors and composed music while feeling specific emotions. The AI learned the subtle shifts in tempo, the minor key changes, the specific dissonances that corresponded with my own neural and cardiac responses to joy, grief, fear, and love. I poured my memories into its architecture. The lullaby my grandmother used to sing to me became the foundation for its calm protocol. The frantic, discordant piece I wrote after my father's death became the seed for its grief protocol. Cadence was, in a very real sense, a digital reflection of my own heart. The original author clause was my idea, a fail-safe. If we are going to put this tool in the hands of studios around the world, I had argued with Liam, we need an ethical guardian. Someone who understands its core, who can prevent it from being used to create emotionally manipulative or soulless, mass-produced noise. He had agreed back when he was still an artist at heart. The clause was embedded in the system's deepest level. Any update or modification to the emotive core required not just executive sign-off, but my biometric voice authentication, speaking a passphrase that only I knew. Then came the success. Cadence won an award for its score on an indie film. Major game studios came calling. Hollywood followed. Our valuation soared past $1 billion. We moved from the garage to a gleaming glass tower. Venture capitalists joined our board. Liam, the brilliant coder, morphed into a polished CEO. The mission changed subtly. It was no longer about creating beautiful music. It was about maximizing shareholder value. The night after I was fired, I sat in my small apartment, the cardboard box sitting unopened on my floor. My company laptop was gone, my access revoked, but they had overlooked one thing. Years ago, during the emotive core's development, I had created a private server to house what I called the Genesis melodies. These were the foundational emotional patterns, the core musical memories that the AI needed to periodically sync with to maintain its depth and prevent algorithmic drift. It was like a musician returning to their roots to find inspiration. The server was registered under my personal academic account, paid for with my own credit card, a tiny expense I never bothered to submit. It was a professional oversight that had just become my ace in the hole. I opened my personal laptop and navigated to a simple command line interface. No Orabeat logo, just a blinking cursor. I typed in my credentials. The entire library of Genesis melodies was there, intact. The system logs showed Cadence had performed its last sync just hours before my termination, blissfully unaware it was communicating with a ghost. I looked at the access protocol. There it was, my name, still listed as the primary author, the gatekeeper. I could have wiped the server. I could have corrupted the data. But that would be too obvious, too crude. Instead, I wrote a single, elegant command. It didn't destroy anything. It didn't attack. It simply severed the connection. I created a new rule that made the Genesis server invisible to any external sync requests from Orabeat's network. Then, I added a voice lock to the command, speaking the passphrase that would seal the change. The trap was set. Nothing would happen overnight. That was the beauty of it. Cadence would continue to function, but it would be cut off from its soul, its source of emotional renewal. It would begin a slow, imperceptible process of decay. I called it emotional degradation. The AI would start to forget the nuances of feeling. Its compositions would become technically perfect but hollow. It would be a genius slowly losing its inspiration, left with nothing but cold, sterile technique. I closed my laptop. For the first time in months, I felt the quiet, steady rhythm of my own heart, the cadence of what was to come. The first thing I did wasn't to check the news or watch their stock price. It was to call Marco, a brilliant, perpetually cynical sound engineer who had been my right hand at Orabeat before he quit, citing creative exhaustion, which was his polite way of saying he couldn't stand Liam's new corporate direction. He was now freelancing from a small studio cluttered with vintage synthesizers. Marco, it's Danny. I'm starting something new. I need a partner. There was a pause, then the familiar sound of a sigh. Let me guess. You want to build something that actually respects musicians. Exactly, I said, a smile touching my lips for the first time in days. Well, it's about damn time, he said. I'm in. That was the first brick laid in the foundation of my new life. While I waited for the seeds I'd planted to sprout at Orabeat, I began to draft a business plan. The vision was simple but radical: to create an AI that served as a collaborative tool for human artists, not a replacement for them. A system built on transparency and ethical principles. I didn't have to wait long. The first tremor hit about a month after my termination. It came in the form of a text from Marco, who still had friends inside Orabeat. It was a link to an article in a major film industry magazine. The headline read, "Legendary director Alastair Finch calls Orabeat's score soulless and repetitive." The article quoted Finch, a notoriously exacting auteur, saying that the music delivered for his new sci-fi epic felt like it was composed by a committee of robots who had read a textbook on emotion but never felt it. I felt a grim satisfaction. Alastair Finch was one of our first major clients. I had personally overseen the creation of the emotional palette for his previous film, a score that had won Cadence its first major award. Jessica, with her MBA and focus on commercial synergy, had clearly failed to understand the nuance required. A week later, the tremors spread to the gaming industry. A thread on a popular game development forum exploded, titled, "Is Cadence AI Getting Dumber?" Developers were sharing examples of soundtracks from the AI that were technically flawless but strangely generic, lacking the surprising, emergent melodies that had made the system famous. Someone posted a side-by-side comparison of a battle theme from a game released 6 months ago and one from a new release. The old theme was dynamic and complex. The new one was a predictable, looping piece of music that lacked any real tension. By the second month, the narrative had solidified. Orabeat, the wunderkind of music AI, was losing its magic. Their stock, which had been climbing steadily in anticipation of the merger, stalled and then dipped by a few points. Analysts called it market correction. I knew it was the beginning of the decay. Inside Orabeat, according to Marco's contacts, there was chaos. Liam had ordered the entire engineering team onto the problem, convinced it was a bug in a recent software update. They worked around the clock, running diagnostics, reviewing terabytes of data, searching for a flaw in the code. They were looking for a technical problem, completely oblivious to the fact that the problem was philosophical. They were trying to fix a machine, but what was broken was its heart. 2.5 months after my termination, the first official communication arrived. It was a stiffly worded email from Orabeat's legal department. "Dear Ms. Mendez," it began. "In a review of Cadence's core architecture, we have identified certain legacy protocols that may require clarification. While your employment has concluded, Orabeat is prepared to offer you a consulting fee of $10,000 per day to assist our engineering team in optimizing system performance." They were offering to pay me to fix the very problem they had created. They still didn't get it. They thought my knowledge was a commodity they could purchase. I moved the email to the trash without a second thought. A week later, with the stock now down a full 15% and another major client threatening to pull their contract, a more desperate email arrived. This time, it was from Liam. "Danny, I hope you're doing well. We're facing some unusual performance issues with the emotive core that our team is struggling to diagnose. Your insights would be invaluable right now. I'm authorized to offer you a significant contracting package, including stock options, to help us navigate this. Please call me." I saved the email but didn't reply. Let him wait. Let him stew in the silent, soulless music his machine was now creating. The crisis reached its peak at the 3-month mark. Their international partners in Asia and Europe were reporting the same issues. The planned merger was officially put on hold, citing unforeseen technical instabilities. The stock tumbled by 17% in a single day. That's when my phone rang. It was an unknown number. "Danica, please don't hang up." It was Liam. His voice was strained, stripped of its usual corporate smoothness. "How did you get this number?" I asked, my own voice a calm level C. "Does it matter?" "Listen, the system is degrading. The music, it has no life. The board is calling emergency meetings. The merger is about to collapse. This is everything we built." "That's where you're wrong, Liam. It's everything I built. You just packaged and sold it." A long, heavy silence stretched between us. I could hear his sharp intake of breath. "You know what's wrong, don't you? This is you, the author clause. It won't process anything with real depth without your authentication." "Interesting," I replied, echoing his own words from that last day. "I thought that was a legacy protocol, made redundant by your new unified executive control system." "Isn't that what you called it?" His voice cracked. "Danny, please, this isn't about us. Think of the company, the employees. It was never about us, Liam. It was about the integrity of the art. You decided that was less important than a stock ticker." "Tell me what you want," he said, his voice dropping to a desperate whisper. "Double your severance. Triple it. A public apology. Reinstatement as Chief Technology Officer. Just name it." I leaned back in my chair, looking at the finalized incorporation documents for my new company on my desk. The name read Resonance Studios. "You erased me, Liam," I said calmly. "Now go explain to your board why the soul of your machine left with me." I hung up the phone and turned it off. That night, I finalized the paperwork. My co-founders were Marco, my brilliant engineering partner, and Dr. Anya Sharma, a leading AI ethicist I had admired for years. Our mission was printed on the front page of our business plan: to build ethical AI that empowers, rather than replaces, human creativity. I funded the startup with my severance and the money from my Orabeat stock options, which I had cashed out the week after my termination, right before the slide began. While Orabeat was fighting a war against a ghost in their own machine, we were quietly building the future. We began reaching out to independent artists, composers, and small game studios, not with a pitch to replace them, but to partner with them. We weren't offering a black box that spits out music. We were offering a transparent, collaborative tool, a platform we called Sonus. The problem with centralized creative AI isn't just that it's vulnerable, I explained in our first presentation to a small group of indie game developers. It's that it creates a power imbalance. It turns art into a commodity. Our model is different. You, the artist, are always in control. The AI learns from you, assists you, but you are the author. You own what you create. The response was overwhelming. Artists who had been wary of AI, fearing it would devalue their work, were excited by our approach. By the end of our first month in operation, we had signed preliminary agreements with 12 partners. We weren't just picking up clients, we were starting a movement. We were building a community around a shared belief that technology should serve art, not the other way around. The cadence was shifting. A new, more hopeful rhythm was beginning to emerge from the silence I had created. The final blow came not from a market analysis or a technical report, but from a single, leaked email. Marco sent it to me without comment. It had been forwarded to him by a senior engineer at Orabeat who had finally had enough. The email was from Liam to the board, dated 1 week before my termination. "The transition plan is in place," it read. Mendez's creative control, while valuable in the startup phase, now represents an unacceptable single point of failure for our commercial expansion. We have implemented a shadow control protocol that will allow for a seamless transition once her position is eliminated. Legal assures me the biometric requirements of the author clause can be legally circumvented through our new executive override. The email confirmed everything. It wasn't a restructuring. It was a corporate assassination. The anonymous engineer leaked it to a prominent tech journalist. Within an hour, the story was on Bloomberg. The headline was brutal: Orabeat's CEO orchestrated corporate assassination to seize control of core AI technology. The email didn't just allege incompetence, it proved intent. It showed a deliberate plan to deceive not only me, but the company's investors and partners. The stock didn't just dip, it cratered. It lost another 30% of its value before trading was halted. The board called an emergency meeting. By evening, Liam Foster had been placed on administrative leave. By the next morning, he had officially resigned. The merger was dead. The following day, I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. The voice on the other end was female, measured, and carried an authority that Liam's never truly had. Ms. Mendez, this is Catherine Voss, chairperson of the board at Orabeat. I was hoping we could discuss a mutually beneficial resolution to the current situation. Her voice was calm, but I could hear the desperation humming beneath the surface. What situation would that be, Ms. Voss? I asked, my tone just as level. A slight pause. I think we both know that Orabeat's technical challenges are directly related to the circumstances of your departure. The board has only recently been made aware of the complete picture. Interesting. When Mr. Foster terminated my employment, he assured me he had the full support of the board. Another pause, this one longer. Information presented to the board appears to have been incomplete. We are conducting a thorough review. In the meantime, we would like to formally offer you your former position back, with the expanded title of Chief Technology Officer and complete autonomy over the Cadence architecture. I'm afraid that's not possible, I replied. I've started a new company. We would be prepared to make a very generous acquisition offer for your new venture, Ms. Voss countered, not missing a beat. The board has authorized me to negotiate a price in the 9 figures. We want you, and the intellectual property you are developing, back at Orabeat. This was the ultimate test. The offer was staggering. It was the chance to return in absolute triumph, to take back everything that had been stolen from me. But as I looked around my small, bustling studio, at Marco arguing with a young composer about a harmony, at Anya sketching ethical flowcharts on a whiteboard, I knew that Orabeat was my past. This was my future. Ms. Voss, I appreciate the offer, but Resonance Studios is not for sale. However, we would be happy to assist any of Orabeat's former partners in transitioning to our new ethical licensing platform. We've developed a streamlined protocol to ensure no disruption to their creative projects. The silence that followed was more telling than any words. They weren't calling to make amends. They were calling to buy a solution. They were trying to put the soul back in the machine with a wire transfer. Perhaps we should discuss this in person, she finally said. I'm afraid my schedule is full onboarding our new partners, I replied. But please, feel free to have your clients contact us directly. We're here to help them. I hung up. The war was over. In the months that followed, Orabeat withered. Without a functional core product and buried under shareholder lawsuits, it became a shell. 6 months after my termination, it was acquired by a massive media conglomerate for pennies on the dollar. The press release spoke of synergistic asset integration. Cadence, my beautiful, complex creation, was stripped down, and its technology was eventually repurposed to generate royalty-free background music for corporate videos and telephone hold systems. Liam vanished from the tech scene. His name became a cautionary tale in Silicon Valley. Jessica Croft, the woman who had replaced me, was let go during the acquisition. A few months later, she sent an application to Resonance Studios for a junior project manager position. Her cover letter was a long, candid apology. She admitted she had been naive and ambitious, and that she had come to understand the profound difference between a product and a piece of art. I hired her. Marco thought I was crazy, but I saw in her a valuable lesson learned. Build systems you'd be proud to sign your name to forever, I told her on her first day. Because the architecture you create will outlast you. A year after I was fired, I stood on a stage in Geneva, accepting an award from the International Council for AI Ethics. Resonance Studios had become the new industry standard, not for replacing artists, but for collaborating with them. Our Sonus platform was being used by everyone from indie game developers to major film composers. The principles we championed, transparency, artist ownership, ethical AI, were being written into international guidelines. As I looked out at the audience, I didn't feel the fire of vengeance. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt a sense of peace. The ultimate lesson wasn't that I was indispensable. It was that principles are. The system didn't fail because I was gone. It failed because the principles I had built into it were violated. Today, my life is not quiet. It is filled with music, with collaboration, with the passionate debates of artists and engineers working together. I sometimes think back to that Friday evening, to the cold boardroom and the cardboard box. Liam thought he was ending my story. In reality, he was just forcing me to compose a new one. He created a silence, and in that silence, I found a new voice, a new purpose. The story wasn't about revenge. It was about reconstruction. It was about proving that the most powerful code you can write is the one that reflects your values, and that is a cadence that can never be silenced.